On segment 5, we're going to cover shock oil, chaining the left rear on a Mod Lite, load sticks on a B-Mod, and OD cups in the front of the car. That ends segment 5. Let's get started. Okay, so we'll go back and answer some of these other questions that people texted earlier. What shock oil do you use, and how important is good oil? Well, we were fortunate enough to have our machine oil guy be a sprint car driver, local, and we are using a Kindle product, and we sent different oils to them, and they sent it to the lab and evaluated it, and we told them what we liked and what we didn't like, and they created this oil. So we do use the Kindle oil, and we have recently sent it back through. Kindle has purchased Red Line Oil, and that become their motorsports division, and we have sent the oil back through them, and it actually, and the guys that work in that lab are, I can't remember their names, but they are super guys. They are really there to help. And I'm not using that product, that Red Line. I've used it in the past, but them guys in the lab are putting 100% effort out to helping people or helping their company to produce the best oil. So I was really impressed with how they went back and spent the time, because when they got our oil, they initially sent me oil, and then they got our oil and they realized the oil we were using, which was coming from Kindle, was better than the oil they were using, which led them to go back and reevaluate their oil and produce better oil. So I thought that was very cool. Oil, and the problem we had at the time was temperature in the oil, heat, velocity growth in the oil column, and there will be companies out there that say, well, we have zero. You can minimize that. We have zero growth in our oil. Well, that's just not true. I'm not going to say that. I mean, we did this testing 2 different ways. Just heated up an oil column and measured the growth, and then we heated up, did it in a shock, heated it up, measured. We built the shock so at zero, and then as the oil column grew, it pushed shaft out more. So we knew where we were at, and we knew how much it would push the shaft out, for every, say, 10 thousandths of oil column growth. So we do use good oil. I do like our builders to use our oil. I do think it's a very good oil. When you talk about oil weights, you're talking about, it's kind of like shock valving. It's just all over the place. But when you're talking about cinescopes, that's pretty much the same for every company. And, by cinescope, we're about a 1.5 to 2 weight oil with very little velocity change, viscosity change. Sometimes the words just don't come out right. Viscosity change from cold to hot. So I thought that was pretty cool, So it is good oil. Good oil, having fresh oil in your shocks is pretty important. So if you race somewhere where you get a lot of rock, like Monette, Missouri, a lot of mud pack stuff, then you might need to service your shocks a little more often than, someplace like Longdale, where maybe it's a little sandier, and smoother type racetracks. If a question comes up, we'll answer that. But okay. So, is there one? Okay, let's go ahead and answer yours.
So, not sure how to say the man's name, but Uri, or when chaining the left rear on a Mod Lite, should I pay more attention to my scale number static or up on the left rear bar, or let it droop only until I run out of preload and not worry about bite? He has BSB 12 series 7-inch shock.
Okay, so yes, difficult name. I don't know if it's Yuri.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If I said it wrong, I probably did.
Mod Lite guy out of Florida races, I think at Henry. Good racetrack down there. Good racing down there. They, I think, maybe in their second season. You know, they have a winter season, summer season, but the chain deal. So it becomes very difficult. Okay, and chain drop becomes very difficult because there's no one set position for the chain to be in. So everybody's talking numbers, but those numbers don't match. Those numbers are no good unless your car is identical at chain location, both at the frame and the rear end. Okay, we had a guy in here yesterday, you know, and he's like, I check my drop at the tire, and I like that, you know. When he's at the shop, he's built him some kind of, you know, speed square deal that he, you know, it's like tall. You know, he can measure his drop, you know, and does it out at the tire, you know. So most guys, like on a modified, are talking 3 inches. He's talking 6 because he's further out. So what you need to do is get the car, you know, jack under the car, like under the seat, jack the left rear up, and get the left rear up to what is a proper position, you know, like you can jack it up until the tire comes off the ground and set the chain there, but there's probably a good chance on that Mod Lite that you're not going to get the car in that much hike. So you need to get the car in the hike position that you feel like it is actually getting on the racetrack. The point of the chain is to get to the end of the chain 2 times every lap. So your preload, when you get there, is exactly the same. Your rear steer is exactly the same. So you have put consistency in the rear of the car, and this will allow you to work on other things that you don't know is going on because of that inconsistency. So you got to get the car hike to a level that is correct. Okay, then set the chain. That'll, and then at that chain drop, set the preload. On that Mod Lite, you don't need 200 pounds. You need like 40 pounds. So you can over preload the rear and create too much drive in the car, and it'll push the nose. So if you're going to be up, no matter where you're at on load, you can't do so much left rear that you push the right front. You have to stay in that balance. If the car won't turn on the right front, you're done. Okay, so determine your height on the rear of the car. Get the chain set, jack the car up, put the preload in it, okay? You may have to take the load off of that shock, so you can't just screw preload in, 40 pounds probably, but you can't screw preload in to a coilover kit like that without hurting it, so it will lock up. So you may have to take the chain off, put the preload in. We're 8 threads per inch on everything, shock, sliders, jack bolts. We're 16 threads per inch on something. I forgot now what it is, but generally, like, all of our jack bolts are 8, all of our shocks are 8. So we like to, you know, stay in that 8 threads per inch. So you divide it by 8, and that's how you figure out how much load you have to put in to get to where you want to be, you know, based on your spring rate.
Luke Riddle asked, are you a fan of load sticks on B-mods? If so, what's a good static number for the right front and right rear?
Okay, load sticks on a B-mod. Yes, I think that's a great deal. You know, and after we've done this video on the right front, and now we have a test stand that we work on to test things for customers, and, you know, to test different theories and stuff. The consistency of what I'm seeing going on is becoming a problem. Okay, so I always in my head thought that, you know, like, the consistency between the lower, the cup, and the position of it, and the position that the lower is in when you put another one on was a little bit better than what it is. So you are seeing some variables in the amount of load it makes. Okay, so initially, you know, guys say, I want a spring load. Okay, well, it's kind of like a percentage. It's so randomly ballpark that it's not good. So my feeling is like this: put the car at 7 3/4, 7 7/8, center bolt to ground, front ride height. Check, if you got a 500, 550, 600, okay, you're in a B mod, you're going to need to be in that spring rate. Going down in spring rate isn't going up in tire traction. There is a benefit to a softer spring as far as making grip, but there's a lot of negative in it. So every time we do something, we have positive and negatives, okay? And our trends, we generally follow a trend because we initially get good results from it, but we don't get long-term results from it. And it takes us a while to iron out, that we can't fix the problem, so always refer to it as a path we go down. And when we start on that path, it's all paved and, it's got trees and the grass is all mowed. And when we get to the end, it's a cow path. We just don't know how long it's going to last before we get to the end of it. Okay, and that's a bad setup. Might start out with we did it and we won. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean we need to change our whole program and go that route. 7 3/4, 7 7/8. Do the load stick. That's your load number for that spring. Okay, that spring rate, that spring brand. Now you change springs, then it could easily change. Okay, then do your 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, because in the 4th inch things change a lot. You also need to determine, can I race in the 4-inch travel zone? Is my frame clearance for a 4-inch travel zone? Is my lower going to allow it? This one might, the next one might not. Okay, so you need to check that. If your frame's not clearanced, I think it's legal to clearance it. If it's not legal, it's going to take a really, really, really good tech guy to see its clearance. Okay, don't let the sides rub up. Get in some good lower control arm bushings. We're building lower control arm bushings, so get into some good bushings. Make sure they have clearance. Make sure they're control arms properly put in the car. But check your 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. Document them numbers. Go watch the video. There's documentation on there. You can print out the paperwork that we produce for that, and you can see there's a spring in there that had a little bit of variable in it. Okay, that's going to happen. That's why there's no magic number. You're going to be on the right front. You're probably going to be in this. We did them at 600. You're probably going to be in this 600, 650 load. If you're going to be at ride height, okay. If your car has caster gain, which it probably will, then you need to think about that. Has the car been bumped? Are you on the right bump bushings? Has the car really been bumped? Caster gain will make the bump worse. It makes the car handle worse. So being all the way down there, do you have enough rebound to control that much load? Is that load going to push the car up? So first, you have to keep the car off the racetrack. And if you're going to be on a very soft spring like a 450, 400, 350, then you're going to have to be above ride height because you've got to keep the car off the racetrack. Okay, that's the number one thing. I don't care what spring rate you're on, the car has to stay off the racetrack, cannot hit. So you have to have enough load. Once you determine what that load is that keeps the car off the racetrack, you can easily race at a download number, your 3-inch number instead of your ride height number. And I don't see a problem in that. And I don't see a problem in being a little softer because it makes your rebound work better. It makes your race car probably work a little bit better on a slicker, slower track. But you cannot get into the track because it kills too much momentum. So right rear, you can do it with a load stick, but you're going to have to bind up the left rear. A lot of times I just do the math on the right rear to determine the math. I just do the math on the right rear to determine how much spring smash I need. So that's in the car, that's out of the car. You might write that down so we can come back and reference that later in the comments.
Okay, and then Kevin Tabor asked, what is your opinion on needing to run an OD cup and Torrington bearings on the front springs? Is this important or just a crutch for improper jack bolt alignment like you showed in your videos?
Yeah, my stance has been, I'm not a big fan of the OD cup, okay? So it looks good. I seen one the other day where a guy made an OD-ID cup. And I'm like, well, what's the point? But I'm going to tell you, it looked really good. It's like kind of cool. If you're on a 300, 350, 400, 450, you probably need to be on an OD cup because the ID cups allow too much movement because they're made for bigger wire. The outside of the spring is the same diameter and the wire changes the diameter of the inside. So probably too much movement on them softer cups. In reality, you would probably be better if you're on a softer spring on an OD cup that had minimal amount of swivel, and there's ways to do that. You might have learned that in that video. You're going to have spring deflection, and spring deflection is going to change the way your spring loads tire. So you don't really want that, and it might be different every lap, every time it goes down on it. My alignment on that spring in that video wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that good. I mean, the spring jack bolt angle versus the lower cup, it's off a little. But that was an IMCA frame, and they are monitoring that jack bolt placement, and you can't lean them in too far. I know some guys have fixed them, and some guys have said they fixed them, and when you look at their car, I can't see how it's much different than what was in that video. So OD cup, if you're in a 550, 600, I'd say no. 500, I'd say probably not. A 450, yes. Anything lighter than a 450, you probably need an OD cup. It's kind of a fad. But the ID cups don't fit very good on the lighter springs.